They say every company has a smell that tells the truth before the numbers do. Ours was a cocktail of burnt coffee, carpet cleaner, and stale ambition. The kind that coats your throat and makes even good people speak in bullet points. I'd spent 8 years breathing it in, not as a martyr, as the person who made sure the lights stayed on when the pitch decks got brave. My name is Lauren. If you ever used our platform and it didn't collapse during a holiday surge, that was me. If a client insisted they'd discovered a bug at 10:07 p.m. on a Saturday and it magically vanished by 10:21, me again. I was the person who knew where the real bodies were buried. Not in HR, but in the handoffs, the silent cues, the fragile places where vision meets cron jobs and fails quietly unless someone loves it enough to check the logs. I was not loved. I was tolerated. Like a fire door you only notice during a drill. The trouble arrived wearing a slim-fit suit and a new last name. Evan married into power and decided it fit him. Overnight, he became VP of Transformation, which in practical terms meant he renamed Slack channels, added emojis to roadmaps, and held meetings about meetings. He called our on-prem Dusty, our billing workflows Grandma Code, and our clients Replaceable. He called me Laura twice. I corrected him once. Here's the thing I learned. When insecurity is dressed in status, it gets loud. It starts brainstorming in verbs it can't define. It hires consultants to diagram the exact bridges it will soon burn, and if that fails, it invents urgency. The calendar invite landed at 3:41 p.m. No subject line beyond quick sync, HR, no agenda, no context. Dispatches like that don't come with questions. They come with choreography. I closed the ticket I was triaging, pushed my chair back, and took the long way around the floor. People looked busy the way people do when they're afraid to make eye contact. The office plants had more water than our runbooks. Inside the HR glass box, Evan sat on the table's edge like he owned gravity. His tie was loosened just enough to suggest he had somewhere more important to be. Probably a mirror. Beside him, our HR manager, Sonia, held a branded folder like a priest with a pamphlet. "Lauren," he said, finally getting it right. "Let's keep this efficient." That word, efficient. It's what you say when you're about to ruin someone's week and you want to sound like a spreadsheet. "We're restructuring," he continued, flashing teeth that never learned discretion. "The company is moving in a bold direction, and some legacy roles no longer map to the future." Legacy. I've learned that in corporate dialect, legacy can mean history, stability, and the very backbone funding your bold direction. But today, it meant me. Sonia slid the folder toward me. I didn't open it. You don't need to read the last page of a book if you've already survived the plot in other languages. "We truly appreciate your service," she said softly. Service. Like I'd been bussing tables, not preventing a catastrophic double-charge rollout by writing a guardrail at 2 a.m. and emailing a thank you to a junior dev who spotted the edge case I missed. I let the silence expand until it became a room we all had to sit inside. Evan broke first, tapping his watch. "If you could hand in your badge, laptop, and—" "Evan." I set the badge on the table, face up, the way you leave a key on a kitchen counter when you know you're not coming back. "Congratulations, you're terminated," is how you wanted this to sound, right? Clean, final, victorious. He blinked, confused, like a dog hearing its name in a different accent. "I'm not here to break anything," I said evenly. "I'm done fixing the things you broke." He smirked, reflex more than thought. "We'll be fine. We have a migration plan." Of course they did. It was a Canva flowchart that looked excellent at 300% zoom and dissolved on contact with reality. The plan assumed authentication would behave like a brochure. It assumed our invoices would reconcile across environments through sheer charisma. It assumed that the person who'd been manually stitching together bad decisions with careful scripts would always be there to stitch. "I've spent years documenting what could be documented," I said. "But there are things you only learn by waking up at 4 a.m. to listen to a system breathe. You can't outsource heartbeat." Sonia's eyes flicked to me. Human. Worried. I liked her in that moment. Not because she could stop anything, but because she knew she couldn't and still wished she could. I stood, folding the severance letter without looking at it. "You have exactly 10 minutes before the system fails," I said, calm, like reporting tomorrow's weather. "Say hi from me to your father-in-law and wish him luck." Evan's smile stalled. "Excuse me?" "10 minutes," I repeated, not because I pulled a plug. Because I stopped holding one. The patching runs that kept your shiny experiments from corrupting billing? Mine. The fallbacks that caught the API when you turned off the old endpoint before turning on the new one? Mine. The compliance alarms you silenced last quarter because they were negative energy? They were warning you, not me. He glanced at Sonia, then at the badge. I watched the math crawl across his face. Arrogance is fast. Comprehension is slower. Panic, though, that one sprints. "This is a threat?" he tried. "It's a reminder," I said. "Gravity works whether you believe in it or not." For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The office hum pressed in, the printer clicking, a distant laugh that didn't know better yet. The AC pushing cold air onto cold shoulders. I slid the laptop across the table, turned toward the door, then paused. "Document everything from here," I told Sonia, not him. "Save your emails to your personal account. If anyone tells you not to, write that down too." Then I walked out through a maze of brand new motivational posters. Dream in iterations, speed loves courage, we are our metrics, and thought about the difference between noise and signal. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam a door. I took the stairs. On the landing between floors, my phone buzzed once. An automated ping I'd forgotten to disable. The last orphaned echo of my midnight caretaking. I watched it fade. 10 minutes isn't a long time unless you know exactly what starts gasping at 9. When you've been the invisible glue for years, you develop an instinct for the moment it starts to peel. It doesn't come with alarms or fireworks. It's smaller, like the flick of a dying light bulb, a whisper in the logs that only you hear. That's what I carried with me as I left the glass box. Badge surrendered, laptop sliding out of my hands like a body I didn't need to resuscitate anymore. I didn't head straight home. I walked 2 blocks to a coffee shop with peeling paint on the walls and tables too close together, the kind of place where no one cares if you sit for hours nursing a cup. I ordered black coffee I knew would taste burnt and a blueberry muffin I had no appetite for. My hands weren't shaking, but my chest buzzed with that low hum of adrenaline, the kind that feels like a secret trying to crawl out of your ribs. From the window, I could see the mirrored side of our office building. 15th floor. The same row of blinds I'd stared at for years during late nights when only the vending machine and I kept vigil. Now, I sat outside the glass box, watching. For the first time in nearly a decade, I didn't owe it my heartbeat. I told Evan he had 10 minutes. That wasn't melodrama. 10 minutes is how long it takes for one of my scripts. My scripts, not the company's. To realize it no longer has the permissions it needs. At first, nothing happens. The dashboards stay green, the graphs look steady. People keep sipping their overpriced smoothies, believing they're in control. But then the edges fray. A client invoice doesn't reconcile. A request times out. A queue overflows and the monitor blinks a warning that looks minor until it isn't. Most of the staff can't tell the difference between an error and a hiccup, but hiccups become coughing fits if no one knows how to clear a throat. I sipped my coffee and let the bitterness anchor me. The thought crossed my mind. Should I have left a trail? A set of instructions tucked in a shared folder? An anonymous email to the 2 junior engineers I trusted, the ones who actually asked questions instead of nodding like bobbleheads during meetings? But then I remembered Evan's smirk. The way he tapped his watch like my career was just a stopwatch to burn through. The way he said legacy as if it were rot instead of roots. I had given this company 8 years of my life. Not just time, but pieces of myself. Sleepless nights, missed dinners, birthdays where I muted family calls because a server migration couldn't wait. And for what? To be dismissed in a glass room by a son-in-law who thought Canva slides counted as innovation. Number. I owed them nothing. The first sign arrived quicker than expected. An email bounced. then 2, then a dozen. I refreshed the news feed and saw a vendor post on LinkedIn. Due to technical issues with our partner system, fulfillment operations are temporarily paused. That word, temporarily, was corporate code for, we have no idea what's happening. My phone buzzed. First, it was Sandra from finance. Hey Lauren, super weird question. Do you happen to have a copy of the Q3 reconciliation tool? Nothing's syncing. Then Darren from procurement. Lauren, are you online? We're locked out of the vendor logs. Aspen is panicking. And finally, Anna, the CEO's assistant, who once snuck me soup when I worked through the flu. I know you're gone. I respect that. But please, where are the system backups stored? I stared at the messages, thumb hovering. The temptation to reply was sharp, electric, but I didn't touch a thing. Not yet. Instead, I opened the internal status page on my tablet. The usual neat rows of green check marks were bleeding into red and yellow. A note had appeared at the top, probably written by some poor intern. We are currently experiencing a temporary disruption in service across multiple systems. Please bear with us as we resolve the issue. Patience. That made me laugh into my coffee. Patience is what you ask for when you've ignored every warning sign until the dam breaks. In the group chat where the old infrastructure team still lurked, people started chiming in. Alex. Told you it would unravel without her. Mira. I give it a day before the board wakes up. Carlos. $10 as Evan blames her on the way out. Then, to my surprise, a new name appeared. Evan himself. Hey team, let's keep the energy positive. We're all in this together. Sparkles emoji. Hashtag solutions not blame. It took everything in me not to spit out my coffee from laughing. I could picture him in that sterile conference room, sweating through his shirt, trying to paste over a crisis with emojis. Meanwhile, systems I had nursed like fragile children were collapsing in slow motion. This wasn't sabotage. That's the part no one understood yet. I hadn't broken anything. I had simply stopped fixing what they never respected enough to learn. And maybe that was the most dangerous revenge of all. Not the noise of destruction, but the silence of absence. I leaned back in my chair, phone buzzing against the table, and felt the city move outside the cafe window. 10 minutes had passed. The real countdown had just begun. There's a difference between causing a fire and walking out of a building where you've been the sprinkler for years. I kept repeating that as the messages stacked up on my phone like hail. I didn't owe Evan a bucket. I didn't owe the company my lungs. But there were people inside I cared about. Quiet workhorses who never made the slide decks. That complicated things. Darren pinged again. We can't access the vendor hooks. Is there a fallback? Sandra followed. Payroll preview shows duplicates. If this posts, we're in trouble. Anna. The CEO wants to know if there are backups off-site. He's asking specifically about legacy fallbacks. Legacy fallbacks. Funny. When I'd created that folder 2 years ago, Evan called it paranoid redundancy. I called it not letting people lose mortgages because a vanity migration went sideways. I opened my personal archive, everything legal to keep, emails I'd sent with warnings, screenshots of approvals, the signed addendum giving me ownership over the automation scripts I'd written off hours. I had the clause highlighted. My name, their counsel's signature. Evan's countersign, lopsided, like he was in a hurry. Receipts matter. Not to win arguments. Those are cheap. But to protect the people who did the work. I typed Anna back. Finally. There is an off-site backup of company data. Confluence page. Legacy fallbacks. Search within for Mirror Haven. Ask it to restore read-only access from the vault. It's company property. You're authorized. I did not mention my scripts. I did not send a zip. Boundaries are lines you draw before people try to move them. Within minutes, the status page showed a trickle of yellow bleeding back to green around the backup nodes. The invoices were still failing, but finance wouldn't bleed out today. A small, mean part of me wanted to let the entire machine seize. The bigger part wanted good people to get paid. My old team chat lit up. Alex. She's not going to let payroll crash. Told you she has a spine and a heart. Mira. Boardroomer, emergency meeting at 5. Evan pacing like a treadmill. Carlos. Vendor just posted again. Service degraded due to client-side authentication issue. Translation. They broke it. I stared at the mirrored windows across the street. For years, I imagined what it would feel like to not be needed. Turns out it feels like standing on a shore watching a tide you used to control. You know exactly which rock will be uncovered next. That's the grief and the gift of competence. Prediction. Sandra called. I almost let it ring out. Then I picked up. Lauren, I'm so sorry, she blurted. I didn't know they were... She exhaled. Look, I'll keep this short. If the duplicate payroll hits, we are in breach with 3 lenders. Do I pause the run? Pause, I said. Tell legal you did it under the emergency stop clause. It's in the runbook. Page 3, I don't have the runbook. Check the Confluence page, quarter-end guardrails. Search stopgap. It's read only, but the steps are plain English. She went quiet, then soft. Thank you. When we hung up, I expected to feel smug. I didn't. Relief came in strange shapes, less like triumph and more like sitting down after standing too long. My email chimed. A message from HR, exit interview optional. Please return any personal items. Attached was a PDF that included a line about cooperation during transition. I laughed. Transition implies a bridge. Evan had bulldozed the bridge, framed it as efficiency, and now wanted to borrow my planks. Another ping. LinkedIn. A thread from our largest logistics client, polite on the surface and furious underneath. We have suspended integrations until stability is confirmed. Our patience has limits. The comments were a slow leak of reputational damage. You can mop a floor after a spill. You can't undo the stain if no one closes the valve. My phone rang again. Unknown number. I let it go. Then a text. Lauren, it's Sonia. Please answer. I picked up. Her voice was low. I won't keep you. I recorded the meeting. Ours. I didn't plan to, but something in me said to hit the button. Okay. If things get ugly, you should know. Evan said the word age before you walked in. He asked if we had risk on legacy staff cluttering the culture. I told him to stop. I wrote it down. I closed my eyes. Discrimination's an ugly word lawyers spell with dollars. I didn't want to fight, but I wasn't going to run from one either. Thank you, I said. Protect yourself. Email the notes to your personal account, then print them and put a copy at your mother's house. She gave a tiny laugh that sounded like a person choosing courage. He's going to blame you. He's already trying, I know. Are you okay? I looked at my cooling coffee, the muffin with one bite missing, the window I'd stared through instead of at. Ask me tomorrow. We hung up. I breathed. Across the street, a man in a suit hustled out the revolving door. Evan. He was talking too fast to a smaller man I recognized as the COO, hands slicing the air like he could carve an outcome he liked. They stopped, mid-argument, both phones lighting up. The COO's face shifted. Anger, then something colder. Arithmetic. Evan pointed toward the building, toward the 15th floor, as if the glass could be persuaded. The COO didn't look. He turned and walked away. Another email arrived. From Board Liaison. The subject line, request for conversation. The body was 2 sentences. We'd appreciate a brief call today. Strictly confidential. Your perspective would be helpful. I didn't answer. Not yet. I opened a new document and started a list. The dates I'd warned them about license expirations. The time I wrote an emergency patch to prevent double billing. The screenshot of Evan approving the deprecation of a service without a fallback. The clause assigning my scripts to me. No adjectives, no heat, just facts, receipts. Then the screen lit up with a name I hadn't expected. The CEO. Not a text, a call. I let it ring twice, 3 times, 4. On the 5th, I tapped accept and said nothing. "Lauren," he began, voice careful. "We seem to have a problem." I waited. "Could you come in?" he asked. "Just for an hour." I looked at the building I had kept from drowning, watched a gull tilt in the wind above it, and thought about the one thing no one in there understood. Help isn't something you demand after you've called it obsolete. "Why?" I said, and let the words sit there like a mirror he had to look into. When the CEO called me that evening, I expected anger. What I got instead was something worse. Desperation disguised as charm. "Lauren," he said, drawing out the syllables like we were old friends. "We've always valued your contributions. I think we just had a miscommunication. Let's clear the air. Come in tomorrow. We'll make this right. Make this right." That phrase stuck like a splinter. You don't make things right after you've let someone be tossed aside like kitchen scraps. You don't erase a smirk in a glass box with a phone call dressed in politeness. "I'll think about it," I told him, and hung up before he could rehearse the next line. That night I barely slept. Not from guilt, though it hovered around the edges, but from the flood of what-ifs. What if Sandra got blamed for pausing payroll? What if Sonia's recording got lost? What if Evan convinced the board that I'd sabotaged the company? Reputation doesn't always bend toward truth. Sometimes it bends toward whoever shouts first. By morning, the news had already spread beyond our walls. A trade site ran a small piece. Major disruptions at Eldridge Corp. Vendors report delays. No mention of me, but the subtext was loud enough for anyone who worked there to hear. I walked to the same cafe, ordered the same burnt coffee, and opened my tablet. My inbox looked like a storm surge. Subject lines screaming, urgent, critical, need your input. Most I ignored. But one caught my eye. From Sonia. "Lauren, board meeting at 3. They've asked Evan to provide a timeline. He's blaming legacy scripts. I think they'll drag your name into it. Please protect yourself." Legacy scripts. My scripts. The ones explicitly signed over to me in black ink. I opened the folder again, checked the clause, reread the scanned page like it was a lifeline. Ownership wasn't just pride. It was my shield. By noon, another message landed. This one from the board liaison. "If you are willing to speak, we'd prefer to hear directly. Off the record. Confidential." I sat with that for a long time, tracing the rim of my coffee cup. Part of me wanted to delete it, to let the building collapse under the weight of its arrogance. But another part, the part that stayed up through flu fevers and migraines patching their systems, wanted the truth recorded somewhere that mattered. So I wrote back. "I'll join remotely. One condition, no Evan present." Minutes later, confirmation. Link provided. At 3:05, my screen flickered to a gallery of faces I'd only seen on holiday cards and glossy brochures. Suits, muted backgrounds, the kind of people who ask about culture while outsourcing it for half the price. "Lauren, thank you for joining us," the chairwoman said. "We want to understand what's happening." I didn't embellish. I didn't dramatize. I told them exactly what I had done and what I had stopped doing. How the backup nodes were still intact because I'd insisted on redundancy. How the payroll guardrails existed because I wrote them. How Evan's modernization cut through critical failovers with no plan. I screen shared the clause, the emails, the timestamps, dates, receipts. Silence followed. Not the awkward kind. More like the sound of people realizing their investment might not be what they thought. One board member finally spoke. "Are you saying these disruptions are natural consequences?" "I'm saying," I answered, "that if you fire the person holding up the scaffolding, you don't get to be surprised when the building groans." The chairwoman leaned forward. "And your scripts? Those belong to you?" "Yes, by contract." Another pause. Then she nodded once, slowly like a gavel falling. "That answers my questions." When the call ended, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty, like after running a marathon you didn't train for. I closed the laptop and pressed my palms to my eyes until the shapes turned white. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed again. Sonia. They cornered Evan, she whispered. The COO asked why he didn't check the contracts. He blamed you. The chair shut him down. Said, and I quote, she didn't sabotage us. She just stopped saving us. I exhaled. Slow, measured. And Evan? He's rattled, but still strutting. He thinks his father-in-law will shield him. Maybe he was right. Nepotism is stubborn, but cracks spread faster than pride admits. That evening, I walked past the office building. The lobby was lit, but the 15th floor glowed dim, screens flickering like dying fireflies. Through the glass, I caught sight of Evan. Hands in the air, phone pressed to his ear, the posture of a man insisting reality was negotiable. I didn't wave. I didn't stop. The truth had already started speaking louder than me. The fallout didn't come like an explosion. It came like a leak. Slow, steady, impossible to plug once you notice the cracks. By the end of the week, Eldridge Corp wasn't just in crisis. It was unraveling. I didn't need to read headlines to know. My phone carried the evidence. Old teammates sending screenshots of dashboards blinking red, vendors demanding penalties, clients announcing temporary suspension of services on LinkedIn. What had once been polished silence now sounded like 1,000 alarms going off at once. And then there were the apologies. First, Sandra. A short message. I'm sorry for not speaking up. You carried us. I see it now. Then Darren. You were right about everything. If you ever consult, I'll fight to bring you in. Even Anna, the CEO's assistant. I wish I'd had the courage to say something sooner. Thank you for everything you did for us. I read them one by one and let them sit. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give. Not yet. Evan, of course, reached out too. His tone swung like a pendulum. First, smug. We'll fix this without you. Then pleading, just a quick call, please. I'll pay you personally. And finally, desperate. If you don't help, my marriage is on the line. I didn't respond. Some doors don't need slamming. They need to stay open just enough for the person inside to realize no one's walking back through. By Friday afternoon, Sonia called again. Her voice was steady, almost relieved. He's suspended, she said. Administrative leave pending review. The board couldn't ignore the contracts, couldn't ignore your receipts. I closed my eyes, letting the words settle. And the CEO? Quiet. Too quiet. He knows this is bigger than his son-in-law. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like watching a house you once built burn down, except you weren't the arsonist. You were just the one who stopped patching the holes in the roof. That night, an envelope slid under my apartment door. Thick, cream-colored, the kind law firms prefer. Inside, a subpoena. Shareholders versus Eldridge Corporation. My name wasn't in the defendant box. It was in the witness list. They wanted me to testify, to explain how one person had been holding the scaffolding while leadership ignored every warning sign. I sat with it for a long time. The temptation was there. Revenge in a courtroom, truth addressed in exhibits and cross-examinations. But I realized something else too. I didn't need to destroy them. They were doing that all on their own. My role wasn't fire, it was mirror. That weekend, I packed a small bag and drove north. No laptop, no charger. Just me, the open road, and a quiet I hadn't felt in years. At a roadside diner, I ordered pancakes and sat in a booth by the window. The waitress asked if I wanted coffee, and for once I said no. My hands didn't need caffeine to shake anymore. They were steady. The truth is, revenge hadn't been the goal. Peace had. For years, I'd been the invisible one. The fallback, the failsafe, the person no one thanked until something broke. And when they finally called me legacy, they didn't realize they were right. I was legacy. I carried memory, continuity, the kind of knowledge you don't buy with consultants or Canva decks. But legacy doesn't mean obsolete. It means foundation. As I drove back into the city on Sunday evening, my inbox lit up again. Among the noise, one message stood out. Subject line, consulting opportunity. A smaller competitor, Stratum Systems, had been circling me for years. They didn't send emojis or promises. Just one line. We've always respected your work. Ready when you are. I smiled, not wide, but real. Respect. That's all I ever wanted. On Monday morning, while Eldridge scrambled through another all-hands emergency call, I signed Stratum's contract. 6 months, double the pay, half the stress. More importantly, no Evan, no nepotism, no buzzwords pretending to be strategy. Just real work, done by people who cared about doing it right. That afternoon, I walked past the old office one last time. The 15th floor was dark. A printed notice was taped to the glass. Visitor Wi-Fi. Welcome one. Same password it had always been. For years, I begged them to change it. They never did. I didn't laugh. I didn't sneer. I just kept walking, the city air cool against my face. People say revenge is best served cold. Maybe they're right. But I think the real prize is knowing you don't need revenge at all. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop carrying what was never yours to hold, and let gravity finish the work. And me? I finally chose peace. My name never made the slides. Not once. 6 years building the quiet engine under the company's glitter, and every deck said R&D excellence like a memorial to a team that never had faces. It wasn't rage that hooked into me. It was the slow realization that I was being erased in real time, pixel by pixel, while everyone nodded along to buzzwords like they were oxygen. The day my boss, Aaron, laughed, "Dumbass, you should have read the fine print." While firing me on stage, people actually clapped. I didn't stand. I didn't cry. I asked the general counsel to read Clause 4B, and his face went the color of printer paper. We'll get there. But first, you have to understand how quiet theft sounds. It started with an invite that never arrived. Then 2. Then 5. Meetings I'd hosted for years were optimized to include impact stakeholders, which somehow meant everyone but me. My access to the investor dashboard timed out for the first time in years. Must be a permissions glitch, Aaron said, flashing the smile of a man who thinks charisma is a job description. The same week, a new co-lead materialized. Nate, who once asked me if an API was like a USB for the internet. You'll love working with him, Aaron said, patting Nate like a golden retriever who'd dragged in a dead bird. He brings fresh energy. Fresh energy in our office meant brunch with Aaron and a brand new hoodie with the company logo in a disruptive font. In the first product sync, Nate called the anomaly router the error vacuum. Everyone laughed. I wrote the anomaly router. It kept entire hospitals from misclassifying critical spikes. No one asked me to explain it. There's a kind of power in being overlooked. You can hear the jokes no one edits. You can see the emails no one thinks you'll read. On the way back from a culture council, I heard Aaron tell legal over sparkling water, "We need a symbolic change before the shareholder meeting. A clean narrative, torch passing. Preferably with applause, I didn't pause. I didn't slam doors. I asked legal to pull my file so I could update my estate planning." Estate planning. Such a polite phrase for sharpening knives. I'd negotiated hard in the chaos of our 2019 pivot, when everyone was begging to have their underwater options repriced. People skimmed, I annotated. People rushed, I stayed late. People said, "We'll fix the language later." I insisted on fixing the language now. That's when I tucked a sentence into a bland section with a blander title. Section 4, B, 4 characters and a letter that would one day move mountains. Meanwhile, the PR parade got louder. Aaron posed with clients in front of diagrams I built. Nate demoed my pipeline with the confidence of a man who believes the save button writes the code. I didn't fight the current. I swam under it. I cataloged everything. Git logs with my handle on every core commit. Review notes in Confluence with my initials stamped like fingerprints. Patent drafts with my name first among inventors. Not vanity. Insurance. Corporate warfare isn't fought with feelings. It's fought with paper. Paper decides who gets a farewell cupcake and who gets the company, whether they know it or not. When the first rumor hit my inbox, leadership changes at the summit, brace for impact. I wasn't surprised. I was ready. I visited Ray in legal with a coffee and a smile, said I was just clarifying a clause for my attorney. Ray's the gentle kind of GC, the kind who tries not to look bored when people misuse the word indemnify. He opened the PDF. I watched his eyes travel down the paragraph I'd highlighted long ago. He didn't flinch. Still in effect, he said. Unusual, but approved. I nodded like he'd told me the weather. Unusual, approved. 2 words that fit in a single breath and could gut evaluation. The next all hands featured a montage. Our logo pirouetting over stock footage of city skylines, slow-motion handshakes, the word agility in a font that looked expensive. Aaron narrated about leaning in and leveling up, which apparently meant I wasn't invited to leadership stand-ups anymore. Nate DM'd me. Thinking we should rebrand the Anomaly stack as Nate AI? Thoughts? I typed back. Love it. Make sure to list all contributors. He sent a rocket emoji. I saved the screenshot in a folder named Documentation. Yes, really. I didn't march into HR. HR writes the epilogue. I write the plot. Quietly, I exported every document I had authored, just my work, nothing more, into a neatly labeled archive. I didn't need a crowbar. I needed receipts. I backed up the design schematics, the data maps, the fallback logic, everything I had materially contributed to. Every timestamp was a bead on a wire. That's when Aaron started practicing his smile in the reflective glass outside the boardroom. He loves to wink when he lies. We're going to honor legacies, he told the camera crew. We're building the next era. He didn't say my name. He never did. If you don't write your own record, someone will write you out of it. The night before the summit, I stood in my kitchen and practiced 2 sentences. Not a speech. Speeches beg for validation. Sentences close doors. I timed the breath between them. Calm, not dramatic. Precision, not performance. I wasn't preparing to be brave. I was preparing to be inevitable. They thought applause could erase signatures. They mistook silence for surrender. They never checked the fine print. And the fine print had my name on it. The ballroom smelled like burnt coffee and money. Rows of chairs lined up in perfect symmetry. Shareholders in suits too tight for their waistlines, shifting papers and checking phones. Behind the stage, screens looped the same 3 words in corporate blue. Elevate, innovate, accelerate. It was theater, nothing more. And Aaron, my boss, self-declared visionary, was the star. I sat halfway back, not because they'd assigned me there, but because no one had assigned me anywhere. My name wasn't in the program. My badge didn't list a title, just staff. A convenient way of pretending the person who'd built the foundation of the company didn't exist at all. The lights dimmed. The music swelled. Some royalty-free anthem meant to inspire courage in the face of spreadsheets. Then Aaron stepped onto the stage, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened just enough to look approachable. He had perfected this image. Part Silicon Valley disruptor, part motivational speaker. He grinned into the spotlight like it belonged to him. Today is about the future, he said, voice amplified to the ceiling. A future powered by agility, vision, and bold leadership. I watched his hands gesture like he was shaping the air into profit. He had never written a line of code, never designed a protocol, never sat in the office past 7 o'clock fixing what junior engineers broke. But he was the one standing up there, selling my architecture like it was his. He launched into the pitch. Graphs appeared on the giant screens. Exponential growth curves, revenue forecasts, testimonials. The audience clapped at each pause, trained like seals. Then came the moment. His smile widened, and his voice dropped into what he thought was gravitas. Every new chapter requires us to honor the past while embracing change. And today, we make that change. He turned toward me, hand extended like he was a king offering mercy. We are saying farewell to one of our longest-serving contributors. Sarah, please stand. The spotlight swung. 100 eyes turned. Some sympathetic, most indifferent. A few confused. They hadn't realized I was still here. The applause started polite, then picked up as a few employees forced it louder. I stayed seated. Aaron chuckled, leaning into the microphone. Come on, Sarah, stand and take a bow. You've done well, but it's time to let the next generation lead. Don't worry, we'll carry your legacy forward. Then he said it. Dumbass, you should have read the fine print. He thought it was clever. A joke. The crowd laughed nervously, unsure if they were supposed to. My chair didn't move. My hand stayed folded in my lap. I looked up, calm, steady. Before I go, I said, my voice cutting through the room without effort. May I ask legal to read Section 4B of my employment agreement into the record? The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was absolute. Ray, the general counsel, sat in the front row, already pale from too much stage lighting. His brow furrowed. He opened his laptop with slow fingers. The applause had died mid-clap. Aaron shifted on stage, caught off guard. This isn't the time, Sarah, he said, laughing thinly. We're celebrating. Let's not drag contracts into this, I repeated myself. Not louder, not sharper, just final. Section 4B, it's one paragraph. Please read it. Ray cleared his throat. His voice, usually soft, echoed against the microphones. Section 4. B. Upon termination without cause, all intellectual property authored or materially contributed to by the employee shall revert to said employee, including but not limited to source code, technical diagrams, design schematics, and related documentation. Murmurs rippled through the room like a spark across dry leaves. A coffee cup slipped from someone's hand and hit the carpet with a dull thud. Aaron laughed again, but the sound cracked at the edges. This is nonsense. It's symbolic. Legal boilerplate, Ray's eyes stayed glued to his screen. He scrolled, lips pressed thin. It's signed, he said finally, voice quiet but carrying. Countersigned. Effective. The shareholders shifted in their seats. Phones buzzed. A few whispered, Is this enforceable? I sat still. Aaron's face tightened, but he pressed forward. This company was built by a team. Not one person. We own this product. We own it. Ray shook his head slightly. The contracts don't reference ownership by committee. They reference authorship, and every record lists Sarah as principal architect. The room tilted. I could feel it. The sudden weight of realization pressing down on every shareholder, every investor. Years of valuations, projections, IPO talk, balanced on work they no longer owned. Aaron turned back to me, smile gone. We can negotiate. Recognition, equity, whatever you want. Let's be reasonable. I met his eyes. Steady. You fired me. Without cause. On stage. It's absolute. That word landed heavier than any shout could have. The screens behind him flickered. The system dashboard glitched, red text flashing across what had been a clean performance metric slide. Someone near the front gasped. A tech lead pulled out his laptop, fingers trembling as he typed. Victor, the CTO, muttered under his breath, We've lost back-end access. Then, louder, to no one in particular, she revoked the tokens. Jesus Christ. The murmurs grew into chaos. Investors stood, calling lawyers. Someone whispered, SEC implications. Another said, material IP loss. The sound of panic is unmistakable. Papers shuffling, chairs scraping, voices overlapping. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I had already won. Aaron gripped the microphone like it might anchor him, but his voice cracked. This isn't final. We'll fix it. We'll challenge it in court. Ray finally looked up, his face drained. It's final. She owns it. The applause was gone. The spotlight still burned, but the stage belonged to me now, without me even leaving my chair. The noise didn't end so much as it thinned out, like oxygen leaving a room. People were still talking, but softer, almost careful, as if the microphones could turn on them next. I stayed seated until the lights brightened, and the stage manager started whispering into a headset like a person trying to hold back a leak with her hands. Then I stood, picked up my bag, and walked toward the side aisle. A few engineers moved aside before I reached them. Not out of respect, out of uncertainty. I used to be the person they messaged at 1:13 a.m. when production threw a tantrum. Now, they didn't know if saying hi to me counted as taking a side. I didn't help them. I just nodded and kept moving. Near the exit, I passed Victor, our CTO, hunched over a laptop balanced on a stack of investor packets. He didn't look up. His fingers were frantic, then still, then frantic again. We're freezing all use of her authored components until we understand exposure, someone from legal said over his shoulder. Do not deploy. Do not present. Do not demo. Victor swallowed. The screen reflected in his glasses made his eyes look like alarm lights. Outside the ballroom, the hallway felt colder. The hotel had overcorrected the temperature, a predictable decision in a building where the carpets cost more than most cars. 2 board members stood by a potted plant, whispering with an urgency that made the leaves tremble. One said injunction, the other said valuation. Both said, how did we miss this, without moving their mouths? Ray found me near the elevators. His tie was crooked. He looked like a man who had read a sentence he wished he'd never learned to pronounce. Sarah, he said, careful, almost gentle. I need to confirm a few things. Of course, I said, but not here. We stepped into a small conference room with a table that tried to look handcrafted. He closed the door, sat, opened his laptop like it might bite him. You negotiated 4B during the 2019 restructuring, he said. No amendments, no carve-outs, no superseding terms. Correct? Correct. Your authorship is documented. Commits, design docs, filing drafts, the works. Yes. He nodded once as if that settled gravity. I've advised the executive team to suspend use of anything you authored until we secure a licensing arrangement. Short term, that means taking product offline. Long term, it means we talk. Today isn't good, I said. You terminated me without cause. That triggers the reversion. Any use now is infringement. He rubbed his forehead. I know. You'll also want to notify partners, I added. Their integrations reference my modules. Better they hear from you than from a cease and desist. He winced, then typed something into an email draft with the kind of focus people reserve for diffusing bombs. When he looked up, his expression had shifted from strained to almost grateful. Thank you for not gloating. I'm not here for theater, I said. I'm here for accuracy. He nodded again. I'll prepare a proposal. We'll be in touch. We stood. He offered a hand, then thought better of it, then offered it anyway. I shook it briefly and left. In the lobby, I sat on the edge of a marble planter and opened my phone. Messages had stacked up in messy layers. A former lead pinged me 3 words. Holy. Absolute. Legend I didn't answer. A junior engineer I'd mentored wrote, Are we out of jobs? I replied, Not if your leadership makes adult decisions. She sent back a single tear emoji, then, thank you. I muted the thread. I ordered a car. While I waited, I looked up at the hotel's glass facade. The reflection threw back a version of the city that looked clean and orderly. It wasn't. Nothing real is. That's the lie that gets people to sign whatever is handed to them. That's the lie that kept my name off slides and my work under other people's voices. In the car, the driver asked if I'd been at the conference. I said yes. He asked if it went well. I said, It ended, honestly. He laughed like I'd made a joke and focused on merging. At home, I changed out of the dress I'd chosen because it had pockets deep enough to hold a USB drive. I made tea. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop, the personal one, the one with the sticker that says document everything. The folder I'd built over the last year sat exactly where I left it. Timestamps, drafts, commit hashes, review threads, PDF exports, receipts, all of them. The kind that doesn't get louder when you shout, just heavier when you look. An email slid in from an investor I barely knew, a man who always managed to be near cameras. "If you're taking meetings," he wrote, "we'd love to talk." I archived it. Another from a hospital vendor. "We rely on your anomaly router for our nightly batch. Should we pause?" I wrote back. "Contact your legal. Request assurance of licensed use. If they don't have it, pause." It wasn't revenge. It was responsible. Then Aaron called. His name lit the screen with a familiarity that felt like an allergy flare. I let it ring out. He called again. On the third try, I picked up. "Sarah," he said, breathless, "we can fix this." I said some things I shouldn't. "You fired me in public." I misspoke. "We're prepared to offer recognition. A bonus, maybe a title." "You can't buy back authorship," I said. "You can license it. Or you can stop using it." "You'll kill the company," he said, and the mask fell just enough for the fear to show. "Think about the team." I am thinking about them. They deserve leadership that reads. He exhaled, long and loud, like a man trying to blow out a fire with hope. "Our PR is drafting a statement. Can we say you're moving on amicably?" "You can say whatever you want," I said, "but say it with a license agreement attached." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Small. I didn't think you'd actually do it." I wrote it down so I wouldn't have to. After we hung up, I sent one email, a short plain note to Ray. Subject line, "Next steps." 3 sentences. I listed a timeline for a temporary license, the rate for an interim period, and a reminder that continued use without agreement would require me to protect my rights. No threats, just terms. I closed the laptop and let the kettle whistle itself out. In the quiet, I finally felt tired. Not triumphant, not vindicated. Tired. 6 years had condensed into a single paragraph and the discipline to say it out loud. People call that courage. It isn't. It's paperwork. The morning after the shareholder summit, my inbox looked like a crime scene. Dozens of unread emails, half of them flagged urgent, the other half full of words like clarification, licensing, and exposure. I brewed coffee strong enough to sting my eyes and opened the first one. It was from a hospital client. "Our integration is throwing errors. Legal says we can't deploy until contracts are cleared. We need guidance." I read it twice, then closed the laptop. That was the new reality. Everything waited on me. For years, I was told my work was invisible, replaceable, the scaffolding no one noticed. Now, that scaffolding was missing, and the building leaned without it. My phone buzzed. A message from Maya, one of the engineers I'd mentored when she was fresh out of college. "They're panicking. Half the team is locked out of systems. Can you talk?" I typed back, "I can't step in. You know why, but you'll be okay. You always were." Her reply was instant. "Not without you." I let the screen go dark. I couldn't fix everything for them. That was the hardest part, reminding myself that protecting my work didn't mean carrying the company on my back anymore. Around noon, Ray, the general counsel, called. His tone was steady, professional, but edged with exhaustion. "Sarah, we need to move fast. The board wants a licensing proposal on their desks by tomorrow morning. If we don't, they'll consider an injunction, and I'd rather not waste months in litigation. Can you meet?" I agreed, but only on neutral ground. A cafe downtown with unreliable Wi-Fi and strong espresso. When I arrived, he was already there, tie loosened, laptop open but untouched. He looked up like a man hoping for mercy. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I'm not here to fight," I replied, sitting down. "But I'm not here to give anything away either." He nodded. "We're clear on ownership. You negotiated it, you documented it, and the board confirmed it last night. No one's contesting that. But we need terms." I slid a folder across the table. Paper, not digital. Short-term license for critical clients. 90 days. After that, renegotiation or rebuild from scratch. Rates are here. He flipped through the pages, lips tightening as he read. "These numbers are high." "They're market," I said. "Maybe higher than you're used to paying internally, but you don't own it internally anymore. You're a client now." His hand stilled on the folder. He didn't argue. He just closed it slowly and said, "I'll take this to the board." We drank our coffee in silence after that. When I left, I felt something I hadn't in years. Air that actually reached my lungs. That evening, Aaron called again. I let it go to voicemail. His message was longer this time, almost rambling. He talked about legacy, about how much he'd valued my contributions, how things had gotten miscommunicated. Then his voice dropped, low and sharp. "Don't ruin us, Sarah." Think about the people depending on this company. I replayed that line twice. "Don't ruin us." As if I had swung the axe. As if I hadn't spent 6 years building the tree while he carved his initials into it. I opened my laptop and scrolled through the documentation again. Not because I doubted myself, but because I needed to feel the weight of it. Git logs with my initials on every commit. Patent drafts with my name listed first. Architecture diagrams signed and dated. Pages and pages of revision notes in my handwriting. It was overwhelming, almost too much. But it was mine. Every line a fingerprint. The next day, the board met me in a small conference room at their downtown office. No cameras, no applause, no stage lights. Just a long table, a row of tired faces, and Ray at the end with my folder. One of the older board members cleared his throat. "Sarah, we've reviewed your proposal. 90 days at these rates is disruptive. But litigation is worse. We're prepared to accept." Aaron was there too, sitting stiffly at the far end. He didn't speak until the papers were signed. Then he leaned forward, voice quiet enough that only I could hear. "You'll regret this. Burning bridges never ends well." I looked at him, steady. "I didn't burn it, Aaron. You set the match. I just made sure it landed where it belonged." For once, he had no reply. That night, I walked home instead of taking a car. The city lights were sharp, the air brisk. Every step felt like a chapter turning, not because I had destroyed something, but because I had protected what was already mine. People think revenge feels like fireworks. It doesn't. It feels like paperwork signed in silence. It feels like leaving a room knowing the record finally matches the truth. And for the first time in years, I slept without dreaming about being erased. 90 days looks long on paper and short in real life. Day one after the license, the company issued a statement with soft words and hard omissions. Transition, strategic clarity, mutual respect. My name appeared once, spelled correctly, followed by former. That was new. Accuracy in public, at least for a sentence. The money hit my account the next morning. First installment for the temporary license. Clean, clinical, and exactly on time. Ray sent a brief confirmation and a list of dates for joint reviews. We would meet weekly to validate the scope of what they could legally touch, what they had to quarantine, and what they needed to rebuild. The calls were quiet. No one tried to charm their way out of language anymore. We talked in definitions and change logs. It suited me. Inside the company, the visible fallout wasn't fireworks. It was smaller. The product page quietly updated to limited availability. The press tour postponed. A roadmap slide with the word re-architecture where next gen used to be. I heard through Maya that Aaron had stepped back from day-to-day operations to focus on vision, which is what companies say when the board asks someone to stop touching the controls. Victor stayed. He was too entangled to be replaced quickly. The team split into two groups. One to keep the licensed components running for critical clients, another to start a parallel stack that didn't use any of my work. They called it Greenfield. It was really brownfield with better lighting. Maya texted me after her first week on the rebuild. It's slower than anyone admits. But it's clean. We're documenting from day one I sent a thumbs up and nothing else. She didn't need me to narrate her competence. She'd always had it. I met with 3 companies that month. Not because I needed a job. The license gave me space. But there's a difference between leaving and landing. The first 2 slid glossy slides across tables and described cultures that sounded suspiciously like mine had on its best day. I passed on both. The third invited me to a conference room with no pitch deck and asked practical questions. How do you structure code ownership to survive reorgs? What does healthy authorship credit look like? What would you refuse to compromise? I liked that last one. I answered carefully. They listened without blinking. I didn't say yes that day, but I stopped looking. Week 5, a hospital CIO asked to speak with me directly. Their overnight batch had stabilized under the license, but they were nervous about the next quarter. Is it safe to keep building on this? He asked. Honest, plain. I told him the truth. Safe for now if they follow the agreement. Safer long-term if they migrate to a stack their leadership understands. He sighed. That's what I thought. He thanked me for answering without selling him anything. Aaron called once more, mid-license. He didn't leave a message. I didn't call back. There are some conversations that only exist to reopen doors you've already closed. A week later, HR sent a form asking for my preferred wording on an exit announcement. I replied with one sentence. Sarah served as principal architect for the enterprise platform from 2018 to 2024. They published it as written. Another small correction to the record. At home, my life got quieter in ways I didn't expect. No more 11:37 p.m. Quick questions? No more waking up to 12 Slack pings and an apology. I started running in the mornings. The park smelled like wet grass and leaf mold and not at all like a server room. I found myself thinking in terms of architecture less and time more. It didn't make me sentimental. It just gave me space to put things where they belonged. On the final week of the license, Ray and I met in person. No entourage. Just 2 people who had both spent a year living inside one paragraph and were finally stepping out of it. We're going to extend the license for 30 days, he said, handing me a light packet. The rebuild is real but not ready. We'd prefer not to rush cutovers for the hospitals I read the terms. Fair, narrow, specific. 30 days, I said, tapping the date. No more. He nodded. No more. He hesitated at the door. For what it's worth, Sarah, this changed how we draft employment agreements, how we read them too. It should, I said. That's the whole point. He smiled without showing teeth and left. I signed the extension and walked 3 blocks to the office of the third company, the one that asked about refusal points. They hadn't decorated the lobby to look like the internet. No neon verbs on walls. Just books, real ones, and a pot of coffee that tasted like someone cared. The VP of product met me at the door and didn't pretend we'd always known each other. We've been building slowly, he said, on purpose. We want ownership to mean responsibility, not possession. What would my title be? I asked. Name it, he said, then write what it means. I took a breath and named something small on purpose. Principal engineer. No chiefs, no global, no anything you can't print on a card without rolling your eyes. He nodded like I'd passed a test he hoped I'd pass. We talked about process, authorship, credit, and what to do when people forget what those words mean. I didn't say yes in the room. I waited until I was outside in the clean air, then emailed 3 words. I'm coming Monday. The license ended exactly 30 days later. The company cut over clients to their new stack. It was slower at first, and it didn't have the features I'd polished into muscle memory. But it was theirs, and they could say that honestly. Maya sent me a photo of her team eating bad cake in a good mood. The caption, "No more borrowed parts." I wished them well and meant it. If there's a lesson to drag into the light, it's not that fine print saves you, or that the law will always be fair, or that a single clause can fix a broken culture. It won't. The lesson is simpler and harder. Put your name on your work, read what you sign, and keep your proof. People will call that combative. It isn't. It's maintenance. It's the boundary that lets you build without being erased. When people ask me what revenge felt like, I tell them it never did. What I felt was relief. The quiet kind that arrives when the record finally matches the truth. The applause ended. The paperwork stayed. And I kept walking.